Hi guys, I'm just another guy named James, and today I'm going to be talking about JLA Year 1. And JLA Year 1 is a 12-part limited series from 1998. It's written by Mark Waid with Brian Augustine and Barry Kitson helping out with the art. And Waid and Augustine did work together on the story also. Now, this is an interesting series for the history of JLA because it basically reintroduces the Silver Age JLA in post-crisis continuity. And post-crisis continuity has a lot of interesting quirks to it, like the fact that Superman is not a part of the JLA until much later in its history than originally seen. And the fact that Wonder Woman doesn't leave Paradise Island until, again, much later than we see in the classic Silver Age JLA comics. So this series basically seeks to show us what that original run of Justice League, what we're supposed to take as canon, what we're supposed to not, for the new post-Crisis on Infinite Earths continuity. It's also an interesting time for JLA because the Justice League had just seen a revitalization with Grant Morrison and I forgot the artist's name, but Grant Morrison's run on JLA, the comic book. And that run started with the very successful story JLA New World Order. I actually have a video talking all about that story. It's going to be linked down in the description below. And honestly, it was just a good time for JLA. This series really did seek to explain away some of the goofiness, some of the weird continuity things about Silver Age DC and how it fits into modern age DC, but honestly, it's just a good, solid, pretty tight story. You just get a great sense of the DC universe reading this series, and honestly, you get a better sense of the DC universe than you do from most other DC comics being published at the time. So yeah, with all that high praise being said, let's just hop it right into our story, which begins with a mysterious figure watching a newsreel about Green Lantern, Black Canary, Aquaman, Flash, and the Martian Manhunter. And they're all fighting these alien threats before coming together to beat another monster. We also see in the newsreel that Superman also fought and beat a monster of his own. Now, 4 of the monsters were destroyed and two remained alive with whereabouts unknown. We then cut to a scene of a crime scene investigator named Barry Allen doing some routine lab work while thinking about how he's going to meet with some other heroes, because Barry Allen is the Flash. And he's going to meet up with the rest of the heroes that we mentioned earlier later that day to follow up on their investigation into the alien threats. Next, we see the other 4 heroes in their civilian lives. We see Black Canary, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, and Aquaman in their civilian lives, trying to decide whether or not they should meet the other heroes. And during these little vignettes into each of their lives, we also see that each hero has a new person entering their life, and that new person is a generally kind force. Later, we see the heroes meet up and join the military as they try to transport the fire monster from the beginning of the story to a military site. But as they enter the cave that they had been keeping the monster in, they see a bunch of people teleporting into the cave and trying to teleport out the 2 monsters. The other monster being the yellow bird that we saw Green Lantern fighting at the beginning of the story. And so the heroes rush in and they start fighting these mad scientist guys who are trying to teleport them away. But the scientists have reignited the fire giant. And the fire giant is able to take out Martian Manhunter, but Green Lantern gets him out and Aquaman lures it away. At the same time, the yellow bird also breaks free, and we learn that Green Lantern's ring can't affect anything that's yellow, leaving Flash and Black Canary to take care of the bird. Green Lantern and Aquaman are able to submerge the fire giant in a ravine inside the cave, and Flash traps the bird in a cyclone, and Black Canary is able to knock it out with her sonic scream. Martian Manhunter takes out some of the scientists, but the scientists destroy the fire giant, and they teleport away with the bird. And the five heroes decide to work together for the rest of the case as they investigate the organization who sent these mad scientists, Locus. An organization who we see is watching the heroes and trying to learn about their strengths and their weaknesses. Locust then begins a bid to recruit Vandal Savage in an attempt to crush the birth of a new age of heroism. So Savage sends a handful of villains to fight the heroes. The heroes are meeting up in Gotham City for what turns out to be a giant press conference, much to everyone's surprise, except for Black Canary, who set the whole thing up. The heroes have decided to become a full-fledged group and announce themselves as the Justice League of America, before being attacked by Clayface, Thorn, Eclipso, and Solomon Grundy. The Justice League is fighting a losing battle as the world watches on TV, with some of the other heroes even commenting on how they're glad to not have been there for the fight. Back at the hotel, we see that the Justice League is trapped in a Thorn prison, but they're able to send Solomon Grundy into a berserker rage, causing the other villains to need to restrain him. The Justice League then attacks as a team and is able to make short work of the villains, except for Solomon Grundy, who has gotten his focus back and takes the hotel down to its foundation. So Flash gets all the civilians out, and Green Lantern is able to get the Justice League out. And after the fight, we hear that the villains teleported away the same way that they came in. The League then smiles and waves for the camera while we see in the crowd that Alan Scott, the first Green Lantern, and Wildcat both think that the Justice League can more than carry on for the legacy of the Justice Society. And Batman, who's been watching from a perch on a building, doesn't like the Justice League, especially when they operate in Gotham. Back on the ground, we see that the League is approached by Green Arrow and Mr. Simon Carr because Mr. Carr's employer wants to fund the Justice League, and any inventions that they may need from inventor Ted Kord. In the Locust base, we see the mad scientist T.O. Morrow trying to create new life from the genetic material of the bird creature from the beginning of the story. But he's struggling. And in Chicago, we see the League take on a group calling themselves the Killer Shark, who are stealing from Kord Industries. The group takes care of them rather quickly, but we see that the tensions are rising in the group. Aquaman, and especially between Aquaman and Green Lantern, and a whole different type of tension has been rising between Black Canary and Flash. And the League picks up the new security system that Ted Kord built for them, and they fly it to Rhode Island, where they install they fly it to the cave in Rhode Island that's now their headquarters, and they install it. And as the team sets up their headquarters, again, tensions are really rising, especially, like I said earlier, between Green Lantern and Aquaman. And that's mostly just because they haven't cauterized as a team. And this tension comes to a head when Flash sets up a round table with chairs for everyone. Chairs for every member of the League. He also puts one in for Superman. Then the Martian Manhunter plays a quick joke on the team by pretending that he is Superman, and then, popping his own head. And everyone bursts out laughing until Aquaman, who throughout the story has been struggling adjusting to life on the surface world, brings the mood down by explaining to the League that he's different, and he doesn't like being ridiculed for it. So the League ends the meeting, and they all go back to their private lives. We then see that Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, is put on something of an administrative leave from his job, but he's also getting pretty friendly with a new coworker of his. We then return to Aquaman, who broke into an aquarium to check and see if the fish are alright, and a Coast Guard buddy of his comes to smooth things over with the security personnel for the aquarium. And then we cut to a pair of mysterious figures taking someone hostage and throwing them into a Locust-branded van. We then cut to Barry Allen, who's running late for a dinner date with his fiancée Iris because of his new friend at work. This is also a pretty good time to mention that Flash and Black Canary have seemed sort of into each other for most of the story so far. And speaking of Black Canary, that's who we cut to next, as we see her at a birthday party for one of the members of the JSA. And we see her mom tell her a secret of some sort. We then cut to John Jones, the Martian Manhunter, as his detective partner brings over a guy for John to vet. At Locust headquarters, we see that they're experimenting with transferring biomatter, i.e. limbs, from their test subjects to their alien protoplasmic being that they're building. The experiment is ready for a test drive, and we see the Brotherhood of Evil agrees to be sent out into the field. We then see Monsieur Mala, the ape, fire the gene graft ray, which is an advanced teleportation application, which couples human flesh to create new bodies, into a crowded Manchester, Alabama. In JLA's HQ, we see that Aquaman's Coast Guard pal is definitely spying on the League as he snoops around the headquarters. We then cut to the California coast, where we see Aquaman and Green Lantern and Green Arrow stopping a trailer park from being flooded. After the disaster ends, GL and Aquaman go back to their headquarters, where they meet up with the rest of the League before they check out what's going on in Alabama. Before we get there, we have to meet the Doom Patrol, the classic rivals of the Brotherhood of Evil. And we meet the members of the team, Elastigirl, Robot Man, and Mr. Negative. And we see that they are also going to Alabama, so the teams team up to fight off the legions of the composite monsters. Naturally, they try to not hurt the innocent civilians, but just keep them under control, which the teams do pretty quickly before turning their attention to the Brain and Mala. The JLA rushes in and is immediately hit with the gene graft ray, and all of them, except for Aquaman, lose their powers and come face to face with the composite Brain. We then cut back to Doom Patrol's HQ, where we see that the JLA and Doom Patrol were able to escape Alabama and run with their tails between their legs. And we see that the JLA has been fitted with machines to replace their stolen superpowers. And the two teams agree to stop the Brain's plot together. But first, they have to get into his power ring-constructed castle in Manchester. Robot Man and Aquaman try to come in from a mountainside, but they're attacked by Madame Rouge. Aquaman is able to keep her occupied until Robot Man ties her into a knot. And then the two heroes go on to continue to try to break into the castle. We also see that Locust has arrived on the scene and are trying to take the gene graft ray back from the Brain. We then see Martian Manhunter, Black Canary, and Elastigirl come face to face with Mala for a quick fight, which ends with Elastigirl throwing Mala into some Locust attack ships. We then cut to Green Lantern, Flash, and Negative Man, who are approaching the front door when Negative Man reveals that he knows Green Lantern's secret identity, and that they're old friends from the Air Force. But they get attacked by Mordrin, who is commanding a giant robot, that the heroes are able to take out pretty quick before they see that the Brain's concentration is broken from the attack from all of Locust and from Aquaman and Robot Man and all of those guys. The Brain strikes out with a vengeance, firing on all the Locust ships, killing everyone in sight with Green Lantern's power ring. He is also able to capture all the heroes except for Flash, Aquaman, and Black Canary. Black Canary sees a Locust agent on the ground dying and begins questioning him. And we learn that Locust is building bodies for themselves they're also building a body for someone else so they can survive some upcoming Holocaust. With some help from the Flash, Aquaman is able to jump to tackle the Brain, leading the two of them to have a battle of wills for control over Green Lantern's ring. A battle that ends with Aquaman victorious and the Brain decapitated. The heroes find the gene graft ray and they put everyone back together. Back at Doom Patrol HQ, we see Negative Man putting some pressure on Green Lantern to find out who's funding the JLA, and then the two teams split off, each back into their own little worlds. Next we see the Justice League crash a party at billionaire Bruce Wayne's house, where they find Simon Carr and they press him about who's been funding the Justice League. But Simon stands his ground and assures the Justice League that whoever is funding them is trustworthy, a fact that is backed up when the Martian Manhunter reads his mind, an ability that the rest of the League finds unnatural and a little uncanny. The League then splits up, goes back to their private lives, and we once again see the people that are spying on them are operating in full effect. But they almost feel guilty about spying until they remember how much is at stake. We then see that Locus's plan has begun to take effect, as they now have refined the android technology that they mastered from the alien DNA, and they combined it with the gene graft ray and a brain transfer to create these new, superior bodies. So Locus enters into the final stage of its plan, but as Locus prepares for Doomsday, we see that the League has been busy running around fighting a variety of supervillains, including one who currently has them trapped in a simulated fight until Superman is able to break them out. And after they beat up the villain, they offer Superman membership to the League. And much to Green Lantern's chagrin, Superman refuses. Superman's refusal seems to really irritate Hal, but the other heroes don't really have much time to dwell on it, as Snapper Carr, the League's tech kid, seems to believe that there is an 8th Apalexian alien that came down to Earth. The Apalexians are the aliens from the beginning of the story. We then see a member of Locus having second thoughts about ending the world, and he is being overrun by guilt. And back with the League, we see Green Lantern and Flash searching the ocean floor for the 8th meteor, and Green Lantern's kind of being a jerk about the whole thing. But the group has a quick run-in with Green Arrow before temporarily giving up the search. Back in the headquarters, we see that there is something wrong with Simon Carr, as he is asking Snapper to more tightly monitor all of the heroes, but specifically Martian Manhunter. We cut to the Locus agent from earlier, and we see that after a meeting with his mentally ill brother, he is completely overwhelmed with guilt, and he leaves everything behind. We then see Snapper catching someone snooping around Justice League headquarters while he's doing some repairs. So he sets up a camera and he shows the League the footage that shows each one of them that their new friends, that they've all been making in their personal lives, that they're really a spy who was, in all reality, someone they all knew, someone they all trusted, the Martian Manhunter. So the League confronts Martian Manhunter. Green Lantern blames himself for the whole situation, and they then try to catch Martian Manhunter, but he gets away. So Green Lantern goes after him, and we then see the Locust defector get shot outside the League headquarters by Simon Carr, who now seems to be working for Locust. We then cut to Simon sleeping at home and having a nightmare about becoming possessed by the Apalexian leader, the 8th alien who crashed down to Earth. The Justice League is then alerted by Snapper and Flash of a series of natural disasters, so the League splits into 2 teams to investigate. Flash and Black Canary investigate the Arctic, and while they're on their way, Flash tells Black Canary that he is engaged, a fact that makes Black Canary really mad. And we then see that Locus has built a machine that uses microwaves to melt the polar ice caps, and that they have left one of their monsters to protect it. But Flash and Black Canary are able to take down the tower by working together to get through the radiation. And then the pair stop. Then the pair go off to destroy another tower in California. Green Lantern and Aquaman are on their way to a tower buried in the ocean when Green Lantern makes a crack about being team leader. This just causes Aquaman to bust out laughing, as everyone else seems to get that Flash is actually the leader of the team. But the laughter doesn't last long, because the pair is confronted by another one of Locus's monsters. The heroes are once again able to beat the monster and stop the machine by working together, before they also run off to California. Before we see what happens in California, we see that Snapper is leaving a message for the JLA about how he's going to check up on his uncle for a few days. But before he can finish the note, we see that Simon Carr smashes Snapper's face through the computer monitor. And in California, we see that the League come face to face with Martian Manhunter. And immediately they use his weakness to fire against him. But as he begs his former allies to stop, we see the fire grow out of control, because this third and final tower was pumping flammable gas into the air. As the air burns around the heroes, they're attacked by an army of locust brutes. And while the League fights the brutes, Martian Manhunter is able to destroy the machine. Flash is able to pull the League into the teleportation portal that Locust has been using throughout the story, and the League finds themselves in the middle of Locust's home base. The leader of Locust monologues to Aquaman, saying that Locust is making the world over and killing all life, so its true leader, the 8th Epilexian, can rule in peace. And the final plan for terraforming the Earth comes in the way of launching an earthquake that brings all of the continents together into one supercontinent. Flash gets the League together and he sends Green Lantern up into space to hold the continents of Earth apart from each other, while the rest of the League shuts down the machine and fights Locust. Flash is able to stop the program and end the quake, and Martian Manhunter attempts to probe the minds of Locust, but his probe sets off a fatal signal and they all die. The League makes it back to their headquarters and we see them almost walk away from each other, until Flash takes off his mask and reveals his identity, leading the others to do the same, and securing the League's trust in one another. The moment is interrupted by Snapper, who comes running up to the League to tell them that Simon is the 8th Epilexian, and that the rest of the Epilexian race is coming to invade Earth. The invasion starts well for the aliens, as they beat up and capture all the heroes of Earth, and they put them in a holding pen on Black Hawk Island. All the heroes except for the Justice League, who are fighting a losing battle to defend Metropolis from the invasion force. Eventually, they're forced to let Metropolis fall, and they regroup. Cut to Simon Carr, the man possessed by the leader of the Epilexians, who has moved his consciousness out of Carr's body into a Fire Epilexian. Carr is then grabbed by Vandal Savage, who is going to use Carr to defeat all of his enemies. And Vandal Savage also takes the machine that the Epilexian used to transfer his consciousness. And back at their HQ, the League goes to look at Manhunter's files, only to realize that Simon Carr must have taken them, and that there are no other heroes left. And it's just them against an army of invaders. They then learn from a fish that Aquaman sends that the rest of the heroes are penned up on Black Hawk Island. So Barry comes up with a plan to get to Black Hawk Island but before the plan can be enacted, the League is captured by Epilexians and brought to Black Hawk Island in chains. Once they get to Black Hawk Island, they reveal that they tricked the Epilexians by using Green Lantern's ring to disguise as each other. Next, they free the heroes and they reclaim Black Hawk Island, and they team up with all of the heroes of Earth to take back the Earth. To open our final issue, we see that Blue Beetle, Green Lantern, the Human Bomb, and the other Green Lantern are fighting a group of glass Epilexians in Metropolis. And we then see similar battles going on all around the world, with some being winning endeavors, some not so much. We then cut to Stonehenge, where we see the Epilexian leader give the order to start targeting civilians before he teleports away.
But Vandal Savage comes in with the Mind Swap device from earlier, now rewired to kill, and he takes out a group of the Epilexians. Next, we jump to Central City, where we see Barry make up with his fiancée Iris, and Black Canary, Green Arrow, and Speedy are fighting the tide, and the tide seems to be turning until seems to be turning for the worse until Simon Carr goes to Snapper and tells him that Vandal Savage has a device that can eliminate all of his enemies, including the Justice League. So the League rallies on Black Hawk Island, and we see that Dr. Fate is beginning to struggle to hold back all of the Epilexians in their pen in Black Hawk Island. We also see Vandal Savage teleport in holding the Mind Ray, and when he's captured, he morphs into Clayface. We then hear how the device will be used to exterminate all of the Epilexians by basically lobotomizing them, and the League is naturally pretty uncomfortable with this, but a decision has to be made quick because all of the Epilexians are breaking free, and the war is about to be lost. So the Martian Manhunter decides to pull the switch, but he reprogrammed the device, making it agonizing but not lethal to the Epilexians. And he does this so he can basically control all of them, send them all home. It's also putting him through such intense pain that he's about to die. And the League and its allies begin to corral the Epilexians into a magic portal back to their homeworld, but the strain on Martian Manhunter is so intense that the rest of the League has to end their mental willpower to his, and we see that the plan is working, and all of the Epilexians are being sent home in exile. We then see that the League has so many people that it can call on, but the core five still have many more adventures to go on to. And in a brief afterward to the story, we do see that that the League is voting for Green Arrow for membership to be the 6th member of the Justice League. And we also see that Green Arrow, or Oliver Queen in his secret identity, is the one who is bankrolling the League throughout the adventure. Alright, so that's the story, and honestly, it's pretty darn good. There's a lot of elements that I really do love about this Justice League story. The characterization is nailed on the head. The way that Mark Waid writes Flash, especially, is just so nice and refreshing. I think this story has your perfect blend of Silver Age storytelling where like all this fun, goofy, throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. But it also has a lot more modern writing techniques where it's more about the characters and less about what the characters are doing and more about who they are. And honestly, it's just a really refreshing series, especially coming from the time and place it did in the late 90s. It's a really refreshing story. And honestly, probably the most refreshing thing is that artwork, because it is absolutely gorgeous. The way the colors just balance perfectly with each other. It's just a really well drawn series. And honestly, the thing that makes it stand out so much against the rest of the art at the time is the way the figures are drawn. They're drawn very small in the panels. You know, if that makes any sense to you. Because you compare, like, this series to the other JLA series that I talked about on the channel, JLA New World Order. And you see the difference between that art style. And part of the difference is the characters are a lot closer to the camera throughout most of the 90s artwork. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I just like this a lot better. And when you combine that with the coloring, the way the faces are drawn, it's just a standout series for the art. And honestly, the way this is going to sound a little too nerdy, but the way the panels are laid out in this series is just really nice. The amount of 2-page spreads you get, the amount of like overlap in panels is really nice. It's just a very visually stimulating comic book, and I love that the creative team, that Mark Waid and Brian Augustine, I love that they didn't shy away from some of the Silver Age roots of the Justice League. And I love that they kept most of the DC Universe characters in the story, because it would have been easier to just have the characters show up, have it just be the 5 members of the JLA who are the first 5. And honestly, it would have been easy, but it also would have been kind of lame. And I really like the way they do this. And something that I have heard about this series from certain people is that it doesn't really make sense in continuity with the rest of post-crisis DC. And that's kind of true, but kind of not. The only thing that makes it a little fuzzy is that Superman is there, but he's not actually a member of the Justice League, and that's how you kind of have to make it make sense. And honestly, it's just a really good story. If you're looking for one of the best stories about the Justice League, I would recommend that. And honestly, the way they just nail all of the characters. I talked earlier about Flash, how he's like he really nails it as the moral center, the like guiding force of the Justice League, the one who kind of makes all the tough calls and makes the calls right. And then you have Green Lantern, who's kind of like this. He's kind of airy. He's got a little bit of a big head, but he's also definitely the powerhouse of the League in these early days. And he's like trying to bear the weight of responsibility for the team on his shoulders by himself. And eventually he realizes that he just can't do that. And I love that character arc for him. I like Aquaman being the character who feels the most alien, where he's the one who doesn't fit in, he kind of ostracizes himself from the League, because the League's willing to accept him, but he's just so untrusting of people that he kind of refuses. I think they absolutely do a great job with Black Canary, where she's just this kind of Justice Society fangirl and she's always comparing herself to her mother, and she kind of views herself as living in her shadow, and eventually by the end of the story, she spreads her metaphorical wings and she flies on her own. And I just think and then we have Martian Manhunter, who so deeply mistrusts humanity that he spies on the only people he ever considered his friends, creates files about them, dives into their personal lives without their knowledge, and that poor decision almost rips apart the League. But it doesn't. And they forgive him, and then they go and they fight bad guys together. And honestly, for this story, it's just nice seeing all of these characters have their own arcs. And they even did what I thought would be impossible to do. They justified the existence of Snapper Carr, the League's teenage sidekick. And in this, they justify him by basically just having him be the League's repair guy, but still, they made it make sense. But yeah, I love all the DC characters you see in the series. You see 2 generations of Blue Beetle, you see the entire Justice Society, the Doom Patrol, the Metal Men, Superman, Batman, all these great characters, Metamorpho, Atom, Green Arrow, Speedy. It just feels like a DC Universe story about the Justice League. And that's really nice, because that is something that you lose a lot in some other stories. It's kind of like, well, where are the other heroes of Earth, And in this, you actually see them the whole time. And it's just a story that I really like. The art's great. The writing's good. Is it perfect? Not quite. It's really close, though. There's just a couple of logical leaps that you make that are wrong and stuff like that as you're reading through it. But overall, it's honestly one of the cheapest Justice League series. I paid $1 for each of my issues, and it's a really good one. Highly recommend. So if you find it and you feel like trying something fun, new, exciting, that you can really just dive straight into, I would totally recommend JLA Year 1. Yeah, really that's all I've got for you today. So I'm just another guy named James, and I'll see you guys next time.